This is the Saint and the Singer.
I'm the Saint.
And I'm the Singer. And we're here to pump you up.
Spiritually.
Spiritually only.
Because I don't exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, just changing the remote and
I use the big spoons at home, so there's more to lift.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, so last week we talked about
Song of Solomon.
Solomon.
Or Song of Songs.
Or Song of Songs. And this week we're talking about... We don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we really don't.
It's been a long week, and I had planned to do some planning. So when I plan to do planning, my plans don't go so well. So I have to not plan to plan so that we have a plan in order to do a podcast.
That was some mental gymnastics there to try to track that.
That's me, mental acrobat.
Yeah, it has been kind of a crazy, just a lot's going on and just so many aspects.
Yep.
And I don't think we're the only people that feel that way. I
would assume we are not.
I mean, we're getting pulled in so many directions. So I guess the question that I have then is, how do we find time? How do we carve out time to do what Jesus did and have the quiet?
Well, this is a question we've been asking ourselves for several months, and I guess that's where we're going to dive in today then.
I just said that. I wanted that just kind of came to me when we were talking.
Okay. So. Well, I mean, that's a conversation we've been having at our house, and we've been having in our small group at church here on Sunday nights when we're actually having it. And it's, quite frankly, it's something that I've become pretty interested and fascinated by and maybe even passionate about is some of these spiritual practices that we seem to have let go over the last, say, 50 to 100 years of the church.
Right.
And one of those being Sabbath.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that will be the only way to answer your question, but that is a way that I and my wife and hopefully eventually my entire family are going to be exploring. So one of the things that I was watching and listening to the other day was John Mark Comer talking about the ruthless elimination of hurry.
Oh yeah, did you listen to that podcast?
I did, and
that's a good one.
It's kind of the precursor to practicing the way, which is what we're studying. But you can see the progression of where he's coming from. Of our lives are too busy. We're trying to fill all the silence and all the dead space in our lives with something, right?
Yep. And
then we wonder why we're always tired. We're exposed to a world of information that I'm not sure we're designed to be exposed to. I told somebody the other day after, all of this political unrest that we're dealing with right now in the country and all this other stuff and who's fighting who and Elon's fighting Trump. And
I heard they made up.
Blah, blah. They did make up, which was hilarious. I think Elon's apology was like, "I'm sorry, I may have gone overboard last week." I thought that was hilarious. But somebody was asking me about some of this stuff at work, and I said, you know what? I think I'm just going to revert back to my caveman self and just worry about what's going on in my cave and my village, and I can't worry about this stuff anymore. And that's sort of one of the themes that we are kind of searching out here is like, how do we take back some of the control that we've given this?
Yes.
And once we do that, what do we do with our time?
Yep.
So we began this process of reading and studying, practicing the way, probably about the same time we started the church.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or started talking about the church. And so it kind of informed how we started this thing, but now we've kind of moved on into a different set of teachings on that, which we can get into some other time. But the very first discussion in spiritual practices, so to speak, is the Sabbath and why we would do that and why we would need it. And there, we could start the conversation with, is it something that we are biblically still commanded to do in the 21st century? However, I don't even know if I find that all that compelling, because whether or not we're still commanded to do it as in the Old Testament, it still seems like a wise practice.
Yeah. Let's break down for a second how John Mark Comer, in 4 words, describes what Sabbath is. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
We think in our mind that Sabbath is simply sitting around staring at each other, doing nothing.
You can't walk more than, what is it,
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet. You can't
1,000
carry
steps.
more than 10 pounds. You can't do this. You can't do any work. You can't do any cooking. You can't do any of that.
That would be the most boring
Pharisaical
existence imaginable. And I would not be thinking about God at that moment. I would be thinking about all the things I want to do, which is completely counterproductive to what Sabbath is. So, but I think John Mark Comer does express it very well, especially when you listen to his podcast on the rule of life.
The rule of life. Yeah, which is a very detailed breakdown of each of those spiritual practices.
But he breaks it down into 4 things, and I think it's stop.
Well, and not only is it 4 things, there's 4 meanings of that word.
Right.
So this was something that I was not completely aware of. It's like, so we talk about love all the time and how Greek there's multiple words for that we translate as love that mean 4 very different things. Well, Sabbath is very similar in that it's used interchangeably with 4 different words, which I did not know.
Yeah, which I think is really cool when you really think. And so we just call it Sabbath, but that has 4 multifaceted meanings.
Yes.
So the first one is stop. And it's not just stop what you're doing, but it's stop what you're worrying about.
Yeah.
I thought that was very important.
Striving.
Stop striving, yeah. And so how many times do we, on a Sunday afternoon, we're thinking about Monday morning's work schedule? We're already thinking about what we have to do the next week. We're planning our calendar, and honestly, as we do that, the stress, the cortisol starts going up.
I'm getting stressed just thinking.
Yeah, I know. Our energy level starts decreasing. At that point, we're already figuring out this is not going to be a good day.
Yeah.
So you have to stop.
So you waste the day worrying and striving for what's coming.
Yeah. And so for just a period of time, and here's, I think John Mark Comer's really good about this. 24 hours, you may not be ready to start just jumping into 24 hours, and that's okay. Try just 2 hours.
Yeah.
Do what you can, start out. So you take 2 hours, carve out 2 hours on a Sunday, and not worry about what's on Monday.
Yep.
That would be blessing.
It's a great start.
Yep.
It's a great start. So first is stop.
Okay.
Second, rest.
Rest.
Which is kind of what gets translated in Genesis, which we'll come back to that later maybe, where God worked for 6 days. And then our translations say he rested, which is kind of what we tend to think of.
We think of getting in a hammock and kind of.
Right. So I worked really hard for 6 days, and now I'm God, and I'm pooped, and I'm going to take a rest. Spoiler alert, I don't think that's what that means.
Right.
But for us, that is what it means.
Sure.
So it is. I mean, the way I look at it, I don't look at it as if I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm looking at it as like, I'm not going to say yes to anything I don't want to say yes to today. I'm going to do things that only recharge my batteries. And we've been probably what I would say mostly consistently. I think we've missed one Sunday where I would say we probably didn't do any rest, but pretty consistently been on that and it's been everything from I will do work out in the yard if I want to. I've got things I want to do. I'll go do them. We've had some Sundays where as soon as I got home from church, I was in my jammies and I didn't get out of my comfy chair except for to get up and go pee, fill my water cup, and have a meal, pee some more, go to bed. I mean, and we were watching movies or played board games or do some things like that. It becomes part of just recharging your physical and your spiritual batteries.
Yeah. And the part about the rest is really important, is that you're resting from what you would normally do. And so I think this is important. If your job
I don't think we're allowed to hit the table. Sorry. It makes the boing noise.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I started doing it.
I'll stop before that. If we are, now you got me all discombobulated. Thank you.
Sorry.
If your job, 40 hours a week or whatever, deals with your brain, then for you, rest may be using your body. Yeah. It might be working in the garden. It might be tinkering on your vehicle or whatever. On the flip side, though, if your job is, physically intensive, labor. You're working for a construction company, you're a welder, whatever, then for you, your rest may very well be much more contemplative or, thought-inducing. It may be reading a book, or it may be listening to a podcast. And that's part of that rest idea.
Yeah.
So I think that's important that we can understand that it's not what we would do on the other 6 days of the week.
Right. And then some of the pushback I have gotten from a few people when I say I Sabbath from sundown Saturday to sundown Sunday is, what about church?
Mm-hmm. Well, so you're jumping. So the third one is, spoiler alert, worship. And we kind of have this problem with defining what worship is. We think worship is automatically just about songs. And I don't think it's just song. That is only one facet of a much greater, I use the word facet a lot, I noticed this.
Facet. Well, it's a good word. But I used it a lot in my worship sermon.
Yeah, okay, good.
Worship is a multifaceted jewel.
There you go. And the reality is, worship isn't just music, isn't just singing. Worship is just as much fellowship. There is just as much worship that happens in the first 5 minutes of our service when everyone's just greeting one another. As fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. That is a worship to God when he sees his church coming together. But praying for one another is a huge aspect of worship. As we are taking our needs to the Lord, that's an aspect of worship. And also just, sitting and contemplative for a few moments, whether that's with our call to worship or those are all aspects of worship. So for us, I think it's highly important that we are involved in church, in a church community and an act of worship as that community. Again, Sunday mornings when we do it, there are those that do it on Saturday nights, and that's awesome too. But that you have a time of doing that. And so that's a beautiful aspect of adding that into our because now going to church isn't an obligation.
Yeah.
It's something I look forward to. This is a part of my Sabbath.
I was going to say with the way we're doing church right now as I feel like a very strong community here. I don't feel like worship is work. I know I'm the worship leader. I do some planning. I do, some of the responsibility, so to speak, for Sunday morning falls on these shoulders, but I don't think of it as work. Right. It's such a blessing and a privilege to lead this congregation in worship that I don't even think of it that way anymore. It's just part of my Sabbath.
That's why you're the singer.
And that's why he's the saint.
But I would say the same thing for me, getting up and, speaking, leading prayer, for me, that's not work. What's work is writing a sermon.
Yeah.
What's work is dealing with the business aspect.
Yeah.
I don't like the business part. That's, that's the part. Like all those little oh yeah, did you talk to this person? Yeah, no, maybe.
Sure.
About such and such, business stuff. Yeah. That for me is work.
Yeah.
Being in service on Sunday morning, that's not work. That is Sabbath. And I feel that. I truly do.
Okay, and then the fourth is delight.
This actually shocked me.
And this was the one I was going to say made the most difference in my thinking on that, especially concerning Genesis. So this is where we're going to bring back Genesis, where the theory is, and I think I'm going to agree with this theory, that when it says God created the world in 6 days and he rested on the seventh, I think that they're using the Sabbath to mean delighted, because that's the only thing that really makes sense. We talk about how we worship a all-powerful, all-seeing, all-present God who spits universes out with his words, and he needs to rest after 6 days
That's
of
not
making
omnipotent
earth.
God.
That doesn't seem right. But when he saw it and said it was good, he saw it was good, very good, exceedingly good. And then on the seventh day, the way somebody put it, I don't remember which one of the guys on the podcast put it this way. It's probably a woman because it sounds very smart and wise. Was that he kind of like, when you think of a painter, so when you finish a painting, you step back and just
admire it.
Look at it and admire your work. You feel proud of it. You delight in it. And I really do think that's what Genesis means when it said he Sabbathed on the seventh day. And so that's another thing we're trying to figure out some ways to do, is to take some delight on
and so I liked how he called it. It was pleasure stacking.
Pleasure stacking.
That was the phrase he used. So basically, you think about all of the enjoyable things that you want to do, and as many of those that you can, do them. So whether that's going and reading a book because you're just wanting to read a book, awesome. Whether that's playing video games with your kids or your buddy or whatever, awesome.
Hiking.
It may be hiking. It may be whatever, maybe doing a puzzle or a board game or, those kinds of aspects, now you're doing some, and the key to Sabbath, it's not really a solo activity.
That was the next place I felt like we needed to go, was that it isn't. It starts with the family. But what I think is really beautiful about how they're describing it, and quite frankly, this is where I want to get in my life, is it's not just me, my wife, and my 3 kids.
Right.
It's people from the community. He talks about they have 8 to 10 to 12 people at their home for the start of every Sabbath.
Yeah.
They have a meal. They have a little ritual they do, which I think one of the pages of the discussion guide has something here, but it's like a list of questions that they start every Sabbath off with, and it kind of reminds me of like reunion group. But it's like, what are your and you're supposed to talk about 3 failures you had during the week, and then you let go of those, and you have 3 successes from the week, and we all celebrate those. And so there's this community aspect of celebrating each other's successes. And then it's not quite like a confession, but it is sort of a confession where these are the places I failed. I'm giving that to God. I don't know.
And I'm sharing it with my community
right.
so they can help hold me accountable. And, for the next week, so I don't say the same thing.
Right. So that's a goal. The thing is that there's no timeline on this. There's no... I don't say by August 1st, this is where I want to be. It's baby steps, because I feel like these are meant to be lifelong practices. And so we're not meant to rush into them. This is not a competition. It's a bettering of ourselves in slow incremental pieces, so that each day we're better than we were the last.
Yeah, and he takes it more than it's not even just for them 1 day a week. It's 1 day a week, 1 weekend a month.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks out of the year together, 2 continuous weeks in the year. Because they basically said that a 1 week vacation is not enough time to really start to hit that Sabbath.
Yeah.
It takes 2 weeks of being somewhere where you start really having that experience of true regenerative rest. And that's the thing, is that we don't realize that we need rest, not just for our mental state, but also for our very physical body.
Well, one of the interesting things, they brought it up in a couple of the different methods, and I don't remember which one I heard it in first, but they said they did a study of the Seventh-day Adventists, and they very strictly Sabbath.
Yep.
And
so 1 day a week.
The 1 day a week. That turns out to be 11 years of your life for the typical human being. Supposedly, this study came out and said that these people, on average, live 11 years longer than the average person.
So whereas a guy lives 74 years, they're living 85.
Because, and I don't know, they're making that correlation. Do I know that that's correlation or causation? I don't, but it's intriguing.
It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah, that you can spend 1/7 of your week, 11 years of your life, perhaps, if you're doing it right. It won't be quite that many for me because I'm halfway through my life, but I think there's some wisdom to that if there's not truth to that. I don't really know.
Yeah,
for sure
I think
how
of
I feel
Elon
about that,
Musk, and I like Elon Musk enough in certain areas, but the one thing that I had to truly disagree with him is that he thinks that, working 85, 90, 95 hours a week can be more productive. And truthfully, I don't believe that. I don't buy it. I think that, anything over about 55 hours a week, your productivity significantly tanks.
Yeah, I seem to be more like 25 hours.
Yeah, that's why I'm a pastor.
25 minutes.
I only work 1 day a week, so.
By 10:30 a.m., I'm done. So
you make it that long?
Some days.
I start at 10:30.
Okay.
I'm done by 11. No, but he was having like the people like with Doge. They were working like they were sleeping 6 hours a day. That was it.
Yeah, sleeping in their office.
In their office because they could not get away because if they left, they were losing that hours of sleep.
Yeah,
that's insanity.
That is crazy. It's
but the reality is that's what our culture does. Our culture is all about. My daughter and my son, my oldest two, just came back from Kenya, and
we're going to do a podcast on that one here pretty soon. We need to have them on.
But what was funny, my daughter says, and I cannot remember the word now, Mzunga, I think is what it. If you're Kenyan, and I just said my Swahili wrong, I'm sorry, but it was what they would call a white person. And what it means is busy person.
Busy person.
That was what they would consider a Caucasian, that was visiting, because we are so constantly on the go. And their culture is the exact opposite. In fact, they have a saying, hurry, hurry has no blessings. And it was like, haraga, I can't remember. I don't remember it in Swahili. Again, my daughter could tell it to you. But we are so motivated, move to the next thing, accomplish this, accomplish that, that of course we are causing ourselves to have anxiety and we're causing ourselves to have, health problems and all this. And Scripture's was warning us against this. Just take Sabbath.
Be still. Know that I am God. It's all through. And again, we can talk about, or we don't need to talk about, in my opinion, whether or not we're still commanded to do it, whether it's right or wrong to do it, or necessary or not necessary to do it. I don't think that's really the point. I think it's necessary for us in a practical sense, whether we believe it is, and I was going to say whether we believe it is spiritual or not, but you can't divorce the two.
Sure.
If I'm physically tired and emotionally tired, my spiritual life is going to be crap. In order to fix my spiritual life, I have to have my physical and emotional life in check as well. And
because they're all connected.
When I'm anxious and when I'm hurried and when all I can think about is all the places I have to be and all the things I have to do, I'm not focused where I need to be focused, and that's there.
Yep.
So let's move to a little bit more of a practical side.
Okay.
The first question I have for you is, are you practicing Sabbath right now?
Inconsistently, but we are trying to get there.
And you've had some interruptions and some reasons not to, so that could be forgiven. But I'm just curious. We haven't actually talked about this. Yeah, we haven't actually talked about this. My wife and I are trying to establish that we're trying to say no to more things. That Saturday evenings we start it, and if we aren't doing it for full 24 hours, we are trying to make sure that Sunday is set aside. And what that means is that we go to worship, we have church, we enjoy it, or we might go to lunch with friends or whatever, or we just come home and have lunch. Oftentimes, my wife and I will take a little nap if we can. We play board games with my kids and like that. If we have Bible study at 5:00, which is kind of how we end our Sabbath, which is really nice too, as we do it with our group.
and if not, we're going to watch a movie together. We're going to hang out. We're just kind of taking it easy.
Yeah.
And so it does help to set the next week on a better foot.
Absolutely. And ours is very similar to that. So, first off, I don't know. I mean, if we're talking about whether or not it's commanded or not, there's also another question of like, does it have to be Saturday to Sunday or Friday? The Jewish tradition was sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, and then we Christianized it at some point and made it sundown on Saturday to sundown on Sunday. And then the question becomes, well, what about people who have to work on weekends or have to do this or I don't particularly think I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
If you're available Wednesday sundown to Thursday sundown,
awesome.
Do it then. We're not making some sort of religious prescription here. It's more like this is wisdom. It will. I feel like, and I can say in my own personal experience, I'm already seeing the fruits in my spiritual life and in my physical and emotional life. Mm-hmm. It's some people may not feel like they would notice the difference in my behavior, but I do. I feel better.
Yeah.
We've been doing it now for 2-3 months, and I can feel that my stress level for the most part is down. I don't dread Monday as much as I used to. I just feel like it's better. So what we do is very similar. Saturday night, sun goes down. It's like, okay, we're starting. Of course, right now in summertime, sundown is 9:00, so it's almost bedtime by that point. But we get up. I take my time getting up Sunday morning. We do the worship thing. Like I said, that's the great way to start it off that way too. Then we try to have a meal all together after church. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. Comer and his group actually have a big meal to start on Saturday night, and I think that's a great thing too. I think at some point during those hopefully 24 hours, there's a group meal, and we have a discussion and we talk about the things, right?
Sure.
That's the goal. That's not where we are now. Right now, it's just, can we get everybody in the same room to have lunch or whatever? And
that's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah. And then, so if it's a beautiful day, we may have a conversation of like, okay, is there anything that you really want to do that you think would charge your batteries? And I listen, and we all kind of come to some sort of, right now it's mostly Michelle and me. The kids we've kind of let have their own choice in the matter. I'm not forcing anything. I do want to we do tend to have at least a lunch together, but once lunch is over, I'm not tying anybody to a doorpost and saying, hey, you got to hang out with us. It's just, hey, would you like to join us with this? Sometimes it's a yay, sometimes it's a nay, and that's okay. Typically, if it's a beautiful day, we're probably going to end up outside. You can delight in creation in that way. If the weather's not so great, I mean, we may just choose to, one Sunday, we watched The Chosen all day and all night. A couple of weeks ago, I think when it was raining on the weekend, we watched probably 8 hours of Duck Dynasty or something like that. And it's usually something that's either lighthearted
or edifying,
easygoing or edifying.
Sure.
I mean, we're not watching.
You're not watching Die Hard
Dogma
37.
and Die Hard 37, which I don't know if there's probably there probably is something wrong with that. I think if you're going to take this time to set aside the day as holy, you're probably not watching Dogma or any of the other Jay and Silent Bob movies. But that's just my personal thought.
I would agree with you on that one. Chasing Amy is not really edifying.
And we just spend the day together.
Yep.
And same, we end up with a Bible study, and then we come home, and usually by that time it's about getting dark. And now you can, if you want, start thinking about tomorrow. But I choose still not to. And we've invested in a cheap steam sauna at the house, so that's kind of become also a thing where like almost a nightly ritual before beds to go get all steamed up and get relaxed and detoxed, and then you're just ending the day fulfilled, recharged, and ready to start the next week.
You talked about should we do the Sabbath or not? And I would say this: Jesus followed Sabbath. Now, did he follow?
I was going to say he did it right.
Did he follow it to the letter that the Jewish, Pharisees at that time, the religious, had established it at? No, because he knew the intention behind it. So did he
Sabbath
heal?
Was made for man, not man made for Sabbath.
Did he heal people? Yes. Did they pick some wheat kernels or whatever and eat those? That was okay because that wasn't the intention behind it. Right. Were they focusing on God and community? And Jesus was very good about going and taking, I need to go up on the mountain. He would leave the disciples, he would leave his ministry for a time to go and just recharge his batteries. Just between being in the presence of the Lord. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about prayer at some point because that's where that one will go to. But I think that's a part of his Sabbath. And I think that...
Absolutely.
So I believe that we absolutely are called, if not, and at least strongly encouraged, but called, I would say it was a good word, to also keep a Sabbath. Not the Sabbath, but a Sabbath.
We have the need built within our bodies to do that.
Yep.
And when we ignore it, things don't go great.
Well, let's look at all the autoimmune diseases and the cancer and the heart disease that we see. When man lives to, if they're lucky, the average for guys now is 75. I think for the first year, the last few years, it's actually dropping some.
We're actually 77 at one point, but I think you're right. It's like
women. I know the girls have dropped. Yeah. Ladies have dropped also because we're all about the hustle. Fight, Hurry, and Hustle is another great podcast that talks about that. Mm-hmm. But the health problems that come along with that is just it's crazy.
Good. It's not good.
So,
well, I think that's probably about all I'm capable of. I need to take a Sabbath from this conversation.
But I delighted in it.
We stopped, we rested, we worshiped, and we delighted.
Praise God.
That's one thing. Comment if you're on YouTube. Actually, on Spotify, we now have comments too. Ooh, yeah. So comment below if A, you think we should be Sabbathing, B, are you doing it, and three, letter 3, do you have any suggestions for what makes a good Sabbath?
Ooh, yeah.
And let's have a conversation about that because that's something I'm very interested in right now. I'm interested in all the spiritual practices, and maybe this just sparks a conversation about the other 8 as we go along. Maybe that's what we do for the next few weeks, or maybe we don't. I don't know. But this is the first. It was funny. This was the first one in all the strings of conversation because if you don't do this one, the rest of them are going to be more difficult.
Right.
So just curious on what you guys' thoughts are about Sabbath, how you would do it. Are you doing it? And do you think we need to do it?
I like it.
So that was 3BA. That way I did it, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, this is Shaun Courtney. He's my pastor and my friend and the saint.
This is Andy Goodson. He's my bro. I truthfully, he's my brother from another mother, but the same father.
Yeah, we look nothing alike.
Yeah, well, that was spiritual father, by the way.
We're both good looking, though.
Yeah. But he's also the worship leader, and I couldn't help lead this church without him. So,
yep,
I love you, brother.
It's been pretty awesome. Love you too, buddy. Anyway. Thanks for watching.
Have a good
Thanks
one.
for listening. Get those comments out there. We really do want to know what are your thoughts out there. And if you get a chance, Sunday's a coming in a few days. Give her a shot. See how you like it, because I'm digging it pretty heavy right now. I can't wait to get into it. My next goal is to slowly convince everybody in my house to turn their cell phones off at sundown on Saturday.
To work on that one.
and not turn them back on until Sunday at sundown, which is going to be a little difficult during worship because we kind of use our cell phones for things like recording videos and planning center and all that sort of stuff. But I really want to strive to leave this little black rectangle in my pants pocket out of my brain for 24 hours.
Yeah, I think that's where I have to get to. I have to start resting from technology, or just resting from, all of the social media, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of my next logical step. It's going to be a while. I mean,
even if it's just for a couple hours.
Yeah,
if I
a couple hours.
Take a couple hours after church or whatever. Just, I'm not going to pick it up until 4 or 5 or whatever.
Yep.
That would help.
When your kids are driving around and people are texting you from church, it is kind of a hard ask to say, we're just turning this bad boy off.
But John Mark Comer does it.
Yeah. I have looked into, and this is maybe something we want to talk about, there's apps that you can download where you can say, I just want these apps available for this amount of time. So you could shut
everything else
off. But say your phone and text or Life 360 or whatever. You could turn everything but that off for a certain amount of time. So kind of going to dig into that this week and see if that might be helpful.
Just shut up all your notifications.
There's that too. That does not keep me from going out and just seeking it out, though.
I get it.
Yeah,
but
I've got all my notifications turned off.
I got a few turned on, but I'm very selective in which ones I have.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the longest outro ever. See you guys next week.
Have a good one. God bless. My name is Shaun Courtney. I'm the pastor at Connection Point Church, and I would like to offer you a big welcome to come join us on Sunday mornings for Sunday school at 9 o'clock. We have adult Sunday schools. We have children and youth Sunday school classes available. Then following that, we have worship where we will sing praises, pray for one another, and listen to Bible study. Encourage you, that starts at 10:15. We are at 700 Sycamore Street in Monette, Missouri. Also on Wednesday nights, we have more small groups following a meal that starts at 5:30. We have men's group, women's group, single moms, children, and youth. Encourage you guys to come and join us. We believe it's very important to be actively involved in the body of Christ because here, you're family.